In this video, we're going to talk about solving quadratic equations by factoring. We'll start with some examples with explanations. Then at the end, there'll be some extra practice problems for you to pause the video, try the examples, and then check your answers with the worked out solutions. And after that, hopefully you'll have found a little more peace in math. Now, remember, factoring doesn't always work like the quadratic formula does. You know, that thing. But when it does, it's a lot quicker and so much easier. So let's go over the steps. Step 1. You want to make your equation equal to 0. That means you want to move all your terms to one side of the equal sign by either adding or subtracting. Step 2. You're going to factor. That makes sense. Step 3. You're going to set each factor equal to 0 and then solve the little baby equations to that result. Alright, so let's take a look at this example. X squared plus 3x equals negative 2. So here's my quadratic equation. If I want to solve it by factoring, step 1, you got to make it equal to 0. So just to keep things easier for us when we do the factoring, I want to keep this x squared term positive. And since it's already positive on the left side, that means everything else is going to go to the left side, like this negative 2. I'm going to move that over by adding or subtracting. So if I want to move this negative 2 over, I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So that way this cancels out. Those add up to 0, and that's what I wanted on one side. And on the left side, there's no like terms to combine, so I'm just going to write them all in order. X squared plus 3x plus 2. Keep these in order to help you with the factoring. Now, if you forget how to factor, I made a video that reviews some different factoring methods for quadratics, so take a look at that video and then come back if you forget how to factor. So for this expression, I have my trinomial. My leading coefficient is 1, so that means I just need to look at numbers that multiply to last that add up to the middle. So numbers that multiply to 2, that would add up to 3. So here's our pair. 1 times 2 is 2, and if I add them up, I get 3. So I can factor this as x plus 1 times x plus 2. And I'm just going to bring down this equals 0. Now for step 3, I can use the zero product property. So what that means is that if I have things that are being multiplied, and it comes out to equal 0, one of these things must be 0. So that means either this, x plus 1, must equal 0, or maybe it's this one, x plus 2. Maybe that equals 0. So by using the zero product property, we get these small little baby equations, and that's step 3 for us to solve. So for solving this, I just need to subtract 1 from both sides, which this you can probably just do in your head. Here I would subtract 2 from both sides, so that gives me x equals negative 2. And here are my two solutions. Okay, so let's take a look at one where we don't have a positive leading coefficient 1, because we're going to do a little bit of different factoring methods than the last problem. So we're going to start off, I still want my equation to be equal to 0. So since I have positive x squared on this side, I'm going to move everything to the left. So let's move this constant over. So we have 5 and negative 5, that adds up to 0. And over here, no like terms to combine, so I'm just going to list everything out. My x squared term, then the x, and then the constant. To factor this, my leading coefficient is not 1, so I'm going to use the bottoms up method. So before I just looked at numbers that multiply to last that add to the middle. This time, since my leading coefficient is not 1, I'm going to multiply that last number by the first. So first times last, 4 times negative 5 gives you negative 20. And I'm going to find numbers that multiply to this that add up to the middle. So the numbers I'm going to use are negative 20 and positive 1. These multiply to negative 20, and if I add them up, they give me the middle number, negative 19. So I'm going to start to set up my factors. X minus 20 times x plus 1. And now since I multiplied that last number by the first number, I have to go back and undo that step. Okay, so I'm going to take this 4. I'm going to divide both my factors by 4. Here, 20 divided by 4 gives you 5, so this factor becomes x minus 5. Here, 4 doesn't go evenly into 1, I can't divide it, so I'm left with a fraction. It can't be reduced, so I'm going to go to the bottoms up method. So bottom number comes up as my coefficient of x, so this is 4x, and then what's left over plus 1. So there's my factor expression, and I'm going to bring down this equals 0 from earlier. Our expression is now factored, so now I can go on to step 3. I'm going to take each of these two factors, and I'm going to set them equal to 0, get those nice little baby equations for us to solve. So here, we can add 5 to both sides, which we can probably just do this in our head. So we get x equals 5 as one of our solutions. Here we can subtract 1 from both sides, so we get 4x equals negative 1. And then after, we can divide both sides by 4. We get x equals negative 1/4. And there is our second answer. If you get good at factoring, you can start to take some shortcuts so that way you don't have to write out every single step. When we did the factoring right here, we had x minus 5 as a factor, and notice we had x equals positive 5 as one of our answers. right here before we did the bottoms up method, there was x plus 1/4, and then our answer, one of them was x equals negative 1/4. Even if we go back and look at the first example we did, we had x plus 1 as a factor, so we have negative 1 as the answer. Here's x plus 2, and then negative 2 as the answer. So you can start to take some shortcuts and not have to write out this piece here in the middle. Hopefully you can start to do that in your head. All right, let's try one more before we get into the extra practice examples. So let's say this was the equation that we had. 9x squared minus 8 equals 10x squared minus 5x minus 22. So I have to make this equation equal to 0 for step 1. I have more x squareds on this side. There's 10 here, 9 here. So I'm going to move everything to the right side this time. That way I can keep this x squared positive. So let's move this 9x squared. So I'm going to subtract that from both sides. And I also want to move this negative 8. So I'm going to add 8 to both sides. So that way these cancel, they add up to 0. These cancel, they add up to 0. So only 0 is left on the left side of the equal sign. 10x squared minus 9x squared gives you 1x squared, or just x squared. There's no terms to combine with this. I'm just going to bring down that negative 5x. And here's some like terms I can combine, negative 22 and positive 8. So that'll give me negative 14. So now that it's equal to 0, I can go on to step 2, which is factoring. Here we have our leading coefficient is 1 again. So that means I just need to look at numbers that multiply to the last that add to the middle. So I'm going to use negative 7 and positive 2. These will multiply to negative 14. And then if I add them up, I get negative 5. So I can factor this as x minus 7 times x plus 2. And I'm just going to bring down that 0 and the equal sign. And now that this is factored, I can take each of my factors, set them equal to 0. So that gives me the little baby equations. But remember, you can take that little shortcut. If one of my factors is x minus 7, that means positive 7 is going to be the answer. If one of my factors is x plus 2, that means negative 2 should be an answer. But if you need to see this worked out, let's go through it. Add 7 to both sides, so that gives me x equals positive 7. Subtract 2 from both sides here, and 0 minus 2 gives me negative 2. And there's my solutions. Okay, here are some practice problems for you to try. Take a second, pause the video, jot these down on a scrap piece of paper, work them out, and then at the end there'll be some solutions for you to check your answers. Good luck! Okay, here are all the practice problems with each of the solutions you should get. I hope this helped you practice solving quadratic equations by factoring, and hopefully this helped you find a little more peace in math. Thank you for watching, and let me know what you think in the comments. Till next time.